Hello, everyone, and welcome to our exclusive 30-minute technical session, real-time data synchronization between HubSpot and MySQL, engineer to engineer. I'm Bosco Domingo, Senior Software Engineer, and I'm here to be your host today. And in the next 20 minutes, we're going to dive deep into how to configure a bidirectional real-time sync between HubSpot and MySQL in mere minutes, not weeks, while also eliminating all the custom integration, maintenance, that typically consumes 30 to 50% of your engineering time. Okay, I am excited to introduce our co-founders, Alexis, CTO, and Ruben, CEO, who will share their expert insights on everything from automated change data capture with zero custom code to building data transformation workflows and more. Stacksync implements robust error handling with retry mechanisms and custom logging, and scales your integration architecture from thousands to millions of records seamlessly. We'll also see live demonstrations covering field-level mapping, event-driven automations using managed Kafka queues, advanced monitoring dashboards, and troubleshooting techniques for production environments. Alexis, Ruben, go ahead and say hi.
Hey guys, nice to meet you. So my name is Ruben. I'm co-founder and CEO at Stacksync. I'm very excited to join you today for this hosted session from engineer to engineer.
Thanks for hosting, Bosco. Looking forward to deep dive into this.
Perfect. All right. At the end of this technical deep dive, we will have a 10 minutes Q&A. So you can go ahead and prepare your questions, write them down, have them ready. Okay. So let's get started right away. Well, first of all, Alexis and Ruben, let's begin discussing the why. Why is it crucial for modern engineering teams to connect with HubSpot and MySQL in real time?
Well, on my side, basically, I've seen now tens and hundreds of implementations where engineering actually would take weeks or just months to just actually synchronize like a CRM or an ERP. And most of this time, this is caused by delays in implementation, such as like engaging in custom coding in terms of dirty plumbing, and also like not having like a concrete architecture around the ERP, not having actually the understanding of what is an ERP and CRM integration in the long term. So this is why we actually built real-time and two-way sync to actually help engineers just read and write data as they would do from a database, but actually all modification made into a database would actually also publish to a CRM. So as an engineer, instead of using complex APIs and actually engaging to this dirty plumbing, you would just actually read and write data into your familiar database, and this would really propagate all modifications at any scale into a CRM. And maybe, Alexis, maybe you can take on the definition of what is really the scalable component of integrations.
Exactly. You can really see Stacksync as infrastructure. In all your project, all this ERP and CRM integration, it's the backbone of it, but it's not what's providing the core value to your business. So it's something that you need to rely on perfectly and you need to scale, but it's not what you want your team focus. It's not what you want your team to focus on. And that's why we are here, to help you build a solid backbone integration where your team can go there and build on top of it. This scalable aspect and this really like resilience aspect is something that is often missing in plenty of projects. You have the sync working in maybe like 70%, 90% of the time, but since it's not always working, you cannot use it for operational use cases. You end up just using it for analyticals or limiting the use cases, the business use cases that you're building on top of it because it's not reliable enough. And that's why we're here. We're here to make you successful, make the implementation of your project successful by providing an extremely good, reliable, and scalable backbone architecture.
Right. So we specialize on that dirty plumbing that you mentioned in order for you to be able to liberate your engineering teams so you can build what actually drives value to your business, correct? Fantastic. Right. Let's move on a bit more into the practical side. Could you be able to walk us through a step-by-step process of setting up and configuring this bidirectional sync between HubSpot and MySQL, please?
Absolutely. So very excited to actually show you this. So actually, I'm gonna proceed and share my screen in the next seconds. Let me show it. Let me share it here. Okay. Can you actually guys see my screen?
You see?
Right.
All right. Seems like it's all good.
Absolutely. So actually, just to go very fast, in what is actually a bidirectional sync. So today we're going to actually explore how to create a bidirectional sync between HubSpot and MySQL. So Stacksync really trim down all the dirty plumbing work that you have to do as an engineer to actually prompt you into 3 very simple steps to create a sync. The first step is just to actually connect your apps. So actually authorizing Stacksync to access both of your HubSpot and to your database, in our case, MySQL. So let's get started with the first step, which is very easy. So here I have like a HubSpot instance, which you actually know very well, and you work on it daily. And I go into my Stacksync workspace and I just create a new sync. I'm going to connect my HubSpot, right? So actually connecting HubSpot is very simple. I can use a pre-configured credential or just create a new credential. So now here, I'm just going to prompt, it's all auth. I'm going to say, okay, it's going to be a Stacksync demo. And that's pretty much it. So Stacksync now will scan your entire HubSpot instance for all standard custom objects, as well as all property history, association, and all the other objects actually you can think of. So everything you see in HubSpot can be synced. Maybe Alexis, you want to add something on this?
Yeah, and just this, it's already something. It's already a time saver for your team. Because HubSpot, how it was built internally, it was not designed in a homogeneous way. Every single object has a different implementation, has a different API, has different requirements. So as Stacksync, we had to build like a specialized infrastructure for every single of them. So just the fact that you can have all of them here for you is already very time saver for your team.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, I can tell you firsthand that I know how painful HubSpot's API can be. So definitely a time saver and a headache saver as well, right? So yeah, it was that easy to set up HubSpot. It's ready for CDC. Now let's go ahead and do the same for MySQL.
Exactly. So now I'm just going to click MySQL. So it's very easy to actually insert the credentials. Stacksync support SSH, etc. So actually all security features. But actually now I'm just going to connect, a pre-configured credential, which I have to actually, we could just have a couple of minutes. So once I have synchronized, actually when I have authorized Stacksync to access my apps, I can go to the second step, which is actually to link tables. So Stacksync synchronizes all the objects that you have. So here, for example, I can see all my HubSpot objects and as well as, the object present in my database. So here I just have one changelog table, and I can see here I just have one changelog table. So Stacksync, I can actually synchronize a table which is already existing, or let Stacksync create a new table. So Stacksync will go into MySQL and create the perfect schema with the perfect columns, perfect data types, everything on a table which is pre-configured for me. So I do not have to do any preparation on my database before I can just start syncing. So here I'm going to connect, my contacts and my companies, for example, right? I'm going to sync 2 things. I can synchronize one way, the other way, or 2-way sync. Today I'm going to synchronize 2-way just because, it's the full power of the tool and what we're going to demo today.
Okay. And so just for that click, we save to your engineers 3-4 hours already,
Yeah.
just for the subject.
Just this, there is no configuration, right? So actually, the engineer did not go to the database yet. Actually, he stayed on the Stacksync platform and actually could define exactly how the sync and how the table is going to look like into the database. So here, Stacksync will create tables named contact here and companies. So now I'm just gonna just rename them, with lowercase. And here I'm gonna say, okay, here I have a contact table. I can see all the fields, so I can actually remap them, change the data type. Or I can also decide, for example, not to sync, if country is not a relevant field. Or for any reason, I could just not to sync it. I should choose not to sync it. And here I'm just going to connect also companies. Once I've selected all the fields here, I will just actually create the base and actually confirm, and this will actually create the table into my database and just go ahead with the syncing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, all the columns are there, right? So we can literally access every single possible field that we could imagine. No matter how many HubSpot has, and they have a lot, you can access all of them. They'll be properly typed, as the Ruben and Alexis have already mentioned. And as you can see, in just a couple of minutes, we've changed the capture from HubSpot to MySQL, just like that. Everything's ready to go. No custom code, no engineer time, no platform headaches, nothing.
No certification.
Right, no certifications, nothing. Just a bunch of clicks here and there, and everything is set up. It's secure, it's scalable, and I think we're ready to move on to the next step.
That's pretty much it. Actually here, if I refer to sync stats, I can see that my data has already been synced. So I have 5 records on both apps and 30 records. So now if I go to my database and I just refresh, I should see 5 companies and 30 contacts, right? So if I go now to HubSpot, I should see that 30 contacts, and same for companies. I should just see 5 companies, right? So very easy, right? So now it's just like, the simple thing. So now, we can just actually just demo how easy it is. Now I'm just gonna create a new contact, and I'm gonna say, it's Alexis at stacksync.com, right? And here I'm gonna name it like, Alexis, right? So this is just like, someone signs up on my website, I will actually just create a row into my database, and this will directly sync into my HubSpot. So actually now you can see that the ID did not propagate yet because the ID is given by HubSpot. So let's see what happens. When I create a contact, I will just actually refresh my page. And now, it should just arrive here. It should be somewhere here already. Here we have 31. Actually,
I think it didn't sync. Can you check in your issues?
yeah. I'm going to check my issues, and probably I think I received an email. Exactly. So already have a duplicate contact. So this is one of the example of, how Stacksync works in its core features. HubSpot does not authorize in my instance actually to have duplicates. So here I already had a contact called Alexis at stacksync.com. So what did happen when I created this contact? Stacksync could actually not create into HubSpot because HubSpot will refuse this record. So now I can go into my issues table and I can see, okay, 28 seconds ago, actually contact already existing ID. So I have also details about my issue. And for example, I can see that here, the email and first name of this person could not be synced because contact already exists. I have the ID of my record in MySQL to actually go and explore manually. So here, if I go and I find my ID at the very end, here I can see, okay, 31, this is where actually my record is. And I can take a few quick actions to actually fix this issue. So here I have the ignore issue, the retry issue. The retry to sync is, for example, if I remove the constraint in my HubSpot, I would actually be able to sync it now. So I would just simply retry and revert the issue. Revert the change. So if, for example, if I'm not happy with the change and this was an error, I would actually just be able to remove that row automatically with a simple click of a button. Today, I'm just going to actually rename it Alexis 2.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right? I'm just going to rename it Alexis 2 just here. And actually now, the record will be able to sync because there are no more Alexis 2 records. So actually here, if I just go into my contacts, I should just refresh. And now, actually 31 records, Alexis 2. And if I go back into my issues table, I just refresh, and now the issue just disappeared because the issue has been completely fixed. So, it's a very full, consistent state.
Okay. Fantastic.
And so here,
in this topic, go ahead, Alexis, please be my guest.
Here, so we see it's easy, right? So you might be wondering, but okay, why are we doing this? Why does this matter to you? Because what we saw in the industry is that companies, they build a pipeline, they build it in the absorption, it always works. The absorption, HubSpot API is always up. In the absorption, the data is clean in the CRM. In the absorption, there was no other task from other systems that came at the same time. It just expects that it works most of the time. Because again, this is not the core of your business. It's not the core of your product you want to build. Product managers and tech leaders, they try to make this infra ready as fast as possible, but they don't invest the time to make it like resilient to all these kind of issues. So at the end, what would happen from what we saw in the industry is that most of the time, the data would have been just lost. The issue would have been silent, and nobody would know, right? And with Stacksync, you have this resiliency where if there's just a little difference, just one record out of 100 millions, you know that it couldn't be synced, you know why, and you can take actions from it super easily. Mm-hmm. And this is one of the features that enables you to provide really like consistent operational use cases.
Right. That's absolutely fantastic. And it's a major difference with the experience that you would have, right? This issue would be maybe you would have to go into the logs or check your alerts, or somebody would get paged at 2 a.m. It's the kind of problem that your engineers don't want to have or don't want to deal with. So you're saving them a lot of time. And we saw how easy it was to solve that problem. We could do it manually, as you showed, Ruben, but we could also just revert the change. If it's something that we saw that was wrong, it's very easy to revert the change and go back to a previous state that we know is safe. And in this topic, I wanted to ask you, what are your critical best practices to ensure a secure and scalable configuration, but one you can trust and you can rely on?
Yeah. So basically, in terms of like, how can you actually trust? So the first of all, like as Alexis was mentioned, is that actually no issue fall through the cracks. So actually it makes sure, like there is no silent issue where actually like the marketing team would call you and say, okay, the figures in the dashboard do not make sense. People are not claiming, the referral bonuses correctly. So can you guys please check? And actually you realize, 2 months ago you missed, and actually so there are some payments missed, some engagement missed, some customer which has not been texted. So this is first of all, issue fall through the crack. And then there is also like, in terms of best implementations, there is this part where you also have to make sure your systems are consistent, simply because actually if you have some operational applications, you might just miss actually, you might actually just charge the wrong amount, or actually displays the wrong information to the customer. For example, we have some customers which, thanks to the bidirectional sync, they actually manage access rights to the app directly from HubSpot, right? So actually they're going to check, authorize access, for, let's say, maybe 50 seats, right? And so, so actually this will actually be changed instantly into my database. For example, here I can just refresh, and now I could see I have 50 seats. And so now the customer would have access to 50 seats in the app, because the app would pump into this table the information how many seats, right? If you actually do not have a system which is robust like this to actually synchronize real time, the customer would have delays. So actually this can lead to actually like more support cost, which actually costs more than the cost of an integration tool at the year if you have a large team. You also have the fact that, this information, by not being consistent, you actually expose your business to very high risk. And for example, here, if you actually implemented this with HubSpot webhooks, for example, you are actually never sure they actually deliver. HubSpot webhooks have the reputation that, which at scale are highly inconsistent. So, if you make like probably like 20,000 changes, or you just launch a campaign which is going to update the status of maybe 100,000 leads, actually you can be sure you can actually miss 0.5 to 1% of these webhooks just on the way, right?
Exactly.
And how can you guarantee that this? Actually, now you have to actually, as an engineer, implement a pooling mechanism, which would actually go back and actually check that all the data which you have received as webhook in real time would actually be as consistent as you actually would expect, and actually scrape the entire data. So now you have actually two scripts and two entirely different mechanism of pulling your data, just by willing to have notification about what happened in your CRM.
Right. Exactly. It's a very good point, Ruben. And this is a pitfall that you might see only when you start going on production, right? Because for the small cases you would do on dev, like you would not realize this, right? And so it's something big customers, like the customer we had, like they saw this too late. Production was already breaking, right?
Exactly.
And it's a very good point, Ruben. And so people, the audience might think, okay, so I just need to do pooling. Okay, that's fine. I will iterate on HubSpot continuously, right? Have a cursor on this. Okay. And then there's another trap, because how data makes the data available through the API, or just even through the UI, it's not actually how is the data written. Let's give an example. I write a record to HubSpot, and Bosco also write another record in HubSpot. I wrote before Bosco, but it's very common that the data from Bosco will appear before. So now all my logic, if I assume that because I wrote it before Bosco, it should be available before Bosco, it doesn't work actually. So you cannot build an assumption on where is the data coming first, and this has a direct impact on the CDC architecture that you want to build, right? Which it's makes it like very hard.
Problem.
Exactly. So you need actually for HubSpot, we need like mix of different ways of reading the data to make sure it's actually consistent. So let you imagine that nobody is doing that in the industry, right?
Yeah,
and that's why it's always breaking.
Quickly to get out of the problem, right? Dig themselves out. That means that they're going to have to dedicate entire teams to just maintaining a HubSpot connection.
And that's why we have customers which have the integration built. They have it, but they still switch to Stacksync because it's not reliable enough, and they need this reliability.
Right. I mean, like the excellent businesses work on this production-ready, 100% available use cases, right? So if you are, it's very easy to build like a demo setup, right, with 90% of the use cases, which work, and nobody will actually see a problem. But like in production, right, if you actually miss a lead and the lead does not receive the magic link to log in, or actually the welcome email, actually this is where things become critical. And so because now the customer is going to text you, it's going to cost a support cost, an engineer is going to have to investigate, and here, we involve like 2 to 3 people between support, customer success, and engineering, and we still didn't fix the issue because now we just investigate where is the issue. So this might take several days, and in 2 companies. We have some companies actually, we onboarded a client which was excellent engineers, which had like an implementation which was completely implemented already, and they were still, realizing that, like even when pulling, actually, the HubSpot API actually does not give you the correct data before 15 minutes because actually they have an internal system of queuing, and this queuing actually does not expose the data. So you might see some data into the UI, and if you query the API, it's different. And this only happens when you have large scale modifications, right? So where some record actually get queued and actually the ordering is not maintained. What Alexis said just before, it's not even because it works at maybe 1,000 records a minute that it's going to work at 100,000 records a minute, right? And on this use case, when you scale, the beauty of Stacksync is really that it enables you to build the robust integration on the same playbook, whether you have like 10 records in your HubSpot or 2 or 3 million records symbol in a single context table in HubSpot. So the same integration will work in all cases, and this is exactly how you engineer would build their implementation.
Right. All right. So I think we can move on to the next question that I have now, which is the challenges that come with that data integration. We've talked about how the APIs may not be reliable. They send data, at the wrong time, so maybe even incomplete. But what about data consistency as well? The mapping between types. How does Stacksync, how does Stacksync handle field level mapping and all the automatic type conversion and relationship handling between HubSpot and MySQL?
Alexis, go ahead.
So yeah, basically it's again like a very minor thing that you might think it's easy, but it's easily become time consuming. And to make it work properly, it's always like you have edge cases on this kind of systems. So there are plenty of issues like this. Like we actually, Ruben can show in the resource page of Stacksync, we have blog post articles where we go into the many issues that HubSpot have. We have documented this so that people who already have integration in-house and cannot switch to Stacksync yet can fix their pipelines. It's a lot. And I would really recommend this kind of cases. For example, we had the case where sometime this customer, like last week, which was breaking, where he had this pipeline breaking, right? Actually, I had one this morning. Like just before the meeting, I had one where basically there was a type that changed in one of their system. No, it was like for an enumeration, right? They changed the value of it, or one that was old value, and now the pipeline was breaking, right? And so the CTO, what happened that the engineers flagged the issue. The CTO joined the channel saying the marketing team or the sales team contacted me because the client contacted me because there was something broken, right? And this is not something uncommon. This is very like, so this was this customer this morning, and there was another one last week. And that's why you want to switch to Stacksync, to stop having this kind of issues, to just have it work and be able to build something that works. It just, right. The magic of Stacksync is this. It just works.
Yeah.
It
and
just
I see
works.
Ruben, thankfully, though. Yeah, I see Ruben sharing the website where you can find all these resources, all these blog posts that Alexis has mentioned. More will be coming in the future. So, keep an eye on it. Make sure that you stick around, because that is a great source to see all of these problems and all these insane cases that we encounter at Stacksync and that we help customers solve, so that you don't have to face them. That this is the kind of thing that we've already found a solution for. So I think we can move on. We've plenty highlighted the problems that come with this, and with all these issues, right? With all these problems that users may encounter if they don't go with Stacksync, if they try to build their own thing, how would they handle them? All these issues happen, right? Now you have to handle them. Now you have to know what's failed. So how does Stacksync, and I think we saw a bit of this in the previous demo, how does Stacksync handle that error handling? And how do we ensure that robustness and those retry mechanisms that your own custom solution probably won't?
Yeah, exactly. What I saw in the industry, at some point they get aware of this, right? Technical teams get aware of it, but they just don't fix it because they don't have the time to work on this. They have so much more to build, right? And imagine from a leader perspective, like the leader is asking, where is that product going? By when is this going to be shipped by the customer? By when is this going to generate revenue for us? And the tech team is saying, oh yeah, we are working for HubSpot, this is minor bugs, Imagine if it keeps happening like this. At some point, the leaders need to tell the team, okay, just deliver the product, right? And therefore, what we keep seeing happening is that it's just not being taken care of, all these silent issues. And that's why with Stacksync, really put an emphasis, really make sure that all this consistency, that any single issue is present in the UI, that it's very clear what is the problem. All the error messages from HubSpot or from NetSuite, which are very cumbersome that you cannot understand, that it's very clear what you can do. You can take action on it very easily. And by the time the tech lead or the PM come back to you, it's fixed because it's really everything is ready for you. Stacksync handle all the cumbersome part, all the tech part, so that all you need to come with is a business knowledge of what you want to do. You don't need to know that this NetSuite 500 error can be due to many things, or when you have that invalid query error without any much details, you don't know what's happening, right? So we built a complex parsing of all these errors so that it's just easy for you to do it. You can just do it. You know what's the problem? You fix the business logic of it, and then you're good. Mm-hmm. It should be as easy to connect your system. It should not be, you should not require a certification of it.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. If you're spending time and engineers' time, right, and getting certifications instead of building your product, something's definitely going wrong. Something that is very relevant as well to businesses. Precisely, it's scalability, right? You might have built a solution, let's say, that handles all these errors and that does all the mapping, right? Let's say you've been able to, and you've spent all the hundreds of hours, and now you start getting a ton of users or a ton of movements, and suddenly it also starts breaking. So how do we ensure scalability, which is a major concern, right, in Stacksync? How can users be sure that their data will actually handle millions of operations?
Tens of millions, hundreds of millions, actually. Like one of our customers last week, he was syncing, I think, more than 50 million rows. It was not small rows, some rows were several megabytes huge.
Wow.
So I don't know what is storing there, but
they're storing bigger files in each
exactly.
row.
You need to scale at that point, right? And maybe at the beginning you say, oh, we'll just put that on a big EC2 server or something like this, right? But it's to make it very scalable is very hard, right? And that's why also we put an emphasis on Stacksync, because all this problem, when they come to you, it's too late, right? And it has massive business consequence.
Right.
And so the fact that Stacksync...
So how do we handle that exactly? More or less, can you give me an idea of the architecture that supports that scalability, or how the platform handles that increased load without compromising performance, or what indicators should we take a look at?
I'm going to take the example of one of our customers, right? So basically a very large education company. So they run public ads on the TV, right? So, and at that moment where they run the ad on the TV, for the next 50 minutes, they have probably tens of thousands of signups, right? So, and the way they actually implemented their Salesforce integration is that every time someone would actually sign up on the website, they would send an API call to Salesforce, right? So the problem with this is that at the moment of the TV ad, maybe it would send really a 10,000 signups a minute, and actually this would actually burn the API rate limits of Salesforce. And so they actually ended up paying for an ad on TV and losing leads just because the API rate limit would actually not be good. And actually because the error logs were anonymized, because they were doing all of the privacy and compliance correctly, they could actually not see all of this data, which means, and actually they need to have an engineer to replay manually to consolidate exactly what was in Salesforce, what was into the database, and actually consolidate this data. And this took approximately 3 days of work, because it was a lot of leads and data was partially implemented. Associations were not done. You didn't create accounts, link with universities, etc. So a lot of automation were actually broken. So what they could do with Stacksync is the following. Instead, in one morning, they actually created bidirectional sync with their CRM database, and they could just simply just write data like crazy right into the database, without being subject to rate limits. And actually Stacksync would synchronize these rows, and smartly batch this record. So instead of doing one by one, we would do actually batches of 10,000s. And actually this reuse they didn't even notice the difference between a high traffic and a low traffic moment into their API rate limit consumption usage. So actually, like we actually reduced to a normal time. Actually, peak time would actually not be normal time, simply because Stacksync does real-time batching for all of these leads. And so no automation were broken, no association were missed. All data was fully uploaded, and actually within the same minute, everybody actually receives a welcome email from the Salesforce automation. So this is exactly how Stacksync can actually help you achieve business goals, and actually not even keep a single engineer, thinking about what would happen in the case of scaling in peak times, simply because actually the Stacksync infrastructure and architecture encompasses, this use case of scalability and peak scenario, peak traffic scenario.
Exactly.
All right.
It's a very good point, Ruben. And here you have the scalability of being able to receive all this data into your system, and then the ability to send it to your like business system, like Salesforce, because they have limited scalability, right, through this API rate limit. And the fact to be able to like optimize for this, to make sure that you use, for example, the bulk Salesforce API when you have big data, right, great quantity of data, or maybe for a big query you want to have like a file upload instead of a query, all this kind of optimization to make sure that you keep optimizing as much as possible your system is very important. For example, for NetSuite, let's say now you have all this data coming, right? For NetSuite, the rate limit is very low. So if at some point you have a job or like an ad like this where you a lot of stuffing, you start doing a lot of queries, if it's not optimized, what will happen is that you will consume all the credit. So all your other jobs, all the other like scheduled jobs and scripts which are running your company, which are like very necessary, which are like required for your company to work. You might process transactions, stuff like this. What happens is that they can't work anymore because they cannot access NetSuite anymore. So it's very important that you scale your system to receive all this data, but you already make sure that you don't impact the business system, that it can still work and it's really optimized for that system. And this is yet another degree of complexity. That's Stacksync.
Okay. I'm afraid we're slightly over the time limit, so I'm going to try to, make it a bit faster. I'm going to have to ask you to, I see you have a lot of information to share. We're going to have to keep this short, okay? So let's hop on to the next question, which is event-driven automation with managed Kafka queues. So automation can significantly boost operational efficiency. We all know that, right? However, it is not always easy to implement. So how is this event-driven automation using managed Kafka queues integrated into the sync process?
Absolutely. So actually, we have several features which help you to actually build a syncs, and event-driven architecture. So basically, the sync is a declarative process where you can just read and write data from a database. But now, actually, what if you actually want to create some task, right? For example, let's say assign a lead to a sales agent, or send a Slack notification when someone signs up, to your team. You need this to be real time, but you also need this to be, just like a event-driven, accessing to multiple tools. So actually, Stacksync actually released this workflow automation tooling, which is actually the most performing tooling and most scalable tooling on the market at the moment. So what does actually Stacksync do? So let's take an example. For example, let's say we want to actually create something where you say, okay, every time Stacksync, you synchronize my data between my CRM database, so all my leads pass through there. So every time that you see a new contact which is created, please send me the payload, and I'm going to send a certification to my team. So this actually, takes, usually a Jira story. You would actually involve like an architect. You have sign off from a VP, and you're going to build a feature, and you need authorization to Slack, to HubSpot, into your CRM. You actually need, also like access to your database, and to workflow automation tooling, or just code, and deploy and manage keys. So a lot of problems built into this. So actually now I'm going to share my screen again, and actually I'm going to show you guys how to actually build this sort of automation in just a few seconds. So here I'm just going to share my screen. Let me know, guys, if you see my screen properly right now. So I'm still on the same screen here. So actually, I just went into my sync screen, I opened my sync, and actually I can see, okay, contact and companies, exactly the tables we have synced before. So now I'm going to create in a few minutes just a sync. So I'm going to create a trigger which tells me, okay, hey, Ruben, please, new contact created to change log, right? So actually, we would like to actually send every time that we have a new lead, we want to actually create a change log of everything that happens into my contact table for new contacts, right? So what I'm going to say, okay, when a new record is created, or maybe update as well on table contacts, and the change comes from, any of the apps, but like we can say HubSpot only, but like, because I want to monitor what my sales team does, but like, here I'm just going to monitor everything. And I can add any kind of custom condition. For example, let's say I only want to tailor this changelog for compliance to actually companies, which are in city, equals to, San Francisco, right? For some reason, right? But like, I'm going to remove this filter, but you can put like literally any kind of filtering condition you want. And based on this, you can actually trigger what we call a workflow automation, right? So Stacksync workflow automations is basically just like sort of like a model where you can have several nodes, right? And which actually welcomes data and actually take actions based on this data. So here I'm gonna select, send new contact data, right? New contact data to changelog DB, right? So now I'm going to create this. I'm going to create simply, this workflow. And now, I have actually a post trigger, which is given to me by default. So now, and I just say, here I'm going to have maybe, the record data, which just changed, right? So I'm going to say, key record. So now I'm going to, it's going to be a JSON. And, my trigger here will also send me the changes, right? So every time there is a change, it's going to send it to me. So I'm going to, and this is exactly what the changes are. So here I'm going to have the entire record, and here I'm only going to have the columns which change. But it's very important because most webhooks actually, almost all webhooks actually do not give you this information. You have to do some comparison yourself to know exactly what changed into this record. So for example, if you override all the time the field email, then every time you're going to override the field email, you're going to send a welcome email. But actually, it's just that, you don't need to send a welcome email when you update the field, right? So this is, the kind of automation which go wrong usually. And we have seen this in multiple CRMs already. So these two fields are required. So I can actually have validation. And now actually Stacksync will just give me, like this, a request, right? Which give me the opportunity to just send data. So now if I go into my terminal and I just paste it, I will just actually have, would trigger some data. So actually I'm going to change it now. I'm going to send empty records. And this record actually just appear here, and I can see, I have, empty changes and empty record. So now I'm gonna paste exactly this here.
Yeah, I think you copied the wrong thing.
Yeah, I have a copy paste the wrong thing. Let me copy paste it back.
Yep, there you go. So with this, what we have is access to an endpoint that we can call from any client in order to trigger that transformation of changes. So in this case, we would get exactly what has changed, as you mentioned, as well as all the entire record. Correct?
Exactly.
Yes, fantastic.
So now actually, I can go just, the sync has been, the trigger has been created. So now I can just go into, let's say, for example, my database. I will just make, a new contact, and I'm going to say, okay, postcode 2. So I will not have like an issue at stacksync.com,
I think the email will be wrong. Yeah, you'll get an issue. The email is lacking the at.
Oh yeah, okay.
So you'll probably get an issue that HubSpot cannot write that, right?
Yeah,
If we
so I'm
check
going
the
to fix it
issues,
right away. Okay, so now it should be passed. So now it's going to be fixed. And this is the easiness, right? It's like the ease of fixing issues instantly, right? So now I just fix my issue. So actually I should have received, like a trigger, like a new contact being created, and I can see, here I can have postcode Stacksync to a stacksync.com. So basically, here. The good thing that now actually I can go into my data, and I can say, hey, I have into my database this changelog table, which contains, a column for record and a column for changes and default values, for ID and created time. So what I'm gonna do actually, I just want to send, whatever I receive from my webhook, into my database, right? So I'm gonna say insert records into my SQL, log changes to changelog. Now I'm going to be selecting my database. So MySQL demo is going to be the table.
So in this case, you could be using a different user, for example, or a different connection to write this data. So even if the original connection didn't have access to this table, because let's say it was a private table, something that you want for security or for auditing, you can still have different permissions, different users. So you know exactly what did where and what. So this kind of power you don't have in many other tools. You'll have to either give one single user, one single service credential all the power in the world to write everywhere and see all the, all the databases that you may have. Instead of this, which allows you to follow the least access, the least privilege principle, where you only give the permissions that each small thing and each connection and each app needs, no more, no less. That is a major point in security as well.
Absolutely. And so, for example, here you can see, like that, like here I can see, I have my body, when I receive body, I have my changes, right? So for example, let's modify time. And here I have like all my record here. So now I just put the entire body, which contains the changes and the record, right? Now I'm just going to save, And so, Stacksync, it's just a very powerful platform because it enables you to replay even workflows. So for example, say if this change log, I didn't have my module yet to actually send this to my database, right? So I would just actually be able to replay this workflow. So now I'm just going to click replay, and this would just actually replay the entire workflow as if it was sent now. So now I should actually be able to see the log appearing into my database. Here we go. Should be here. Actually, did we? Actually, it is taking a bit of that. Actually, there was an error. So let's see what the error is. That's easy to actually understand. I'm going to enlarge the view. Okay, there is no table public.
I think the schema may be right. Yeah.
Okay, so what is my database? Default DB. Okay, there is no database. Okay, exactly, right? So imagine this is a production use case where this is an error which just happened, right? So I have a default DB. Now I just changed. I'm going to save my module and I'm going to replace this workflow, right? So actually, the input of my data was this, and I don't want to miss this, right? So replaying a log is insanely hard, right? But now I'm just going to click replay. I can replace this data scale. So now we're just going to be gone into my database. And if I replace this, exactly. Okay. Now the log is here. That's pretty much it. So basically now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to say, hey, I'm going to go into my contacts database, and I'm going to say, okay, now I'm going to modify for all of these companies. I'm going to modify company and I'm going to say size 11, right? Why not? So I'm going to modify all of these. So all of this company, like now it's modifying all of this one by one. It has been modified. Now I just go into my workflow and I can see, like now plenty of workflows would actually kickstart. Exactly. And now I can see already many logs start appearing. So now I can see what exactly. So here I can see the entire record, which is just here. And here I can just see what was changed. So only 11 was changed. And so, yeah. So now I just have like all my data, which is just appearing, and it just extremely fast, auto scaling 100%, So now if I just resend, it's going to take like a few milliseconds for each of these to actually execute. So that's pretty much it. Actually, this is exactly how you can actually, so right now in just a few seconds, we actually built a pipeline which logs everything which happens into our database. Into our CRM, actually into a context table into our CRM, into a log table, so I can actually use this for compliance or just dashboarding to actually, let's say, for example, every time a company size changes, I just want to actually display a graph, right? So display a graph that's for group by this company and actually display all the evolution of the company size step per time, right? By date. So, this is like, it took us a few minutes to actually build the workflow. We even have a few issues in between. We could
fix
just
them live. And we showed how easy it is, right?
And it's very easy, right? So now actually I'm gonna, I can modify, this to 12 again. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much for that demo. That was quite interesting to see how we can leverage workflows that are completely custom built. This is power to you. Do whatever you think is best with your data. Handle it however you want. We give you all the tools that you may need, including like your own arbitrary code that you can run so you can do whatever you want or what your business needs for your data, and you're in power of it. That's the magnificent ability that workflows gives you. And with that, we're going to start wrapping up this webinar. We went a bit over time, but we still want to hear your questions. Open the floor for the 10 minutes of Q&A. If anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll be more than happy to answer them. And remember also that we have an exclusive offer. This is a bit of a surprise. All attendees will receive 14 days of Stacksync Pro as a trial just for being here. So feel free, to browse our platform, try it out for yourselves, connect a couple of data sources and see how bidirectional real-time data sync fields. I'm sure it'll be amazing. And we want to also remind you that we have a fantastic architecture guide in order to understand all the advanced nuances of this power. Obviously, we showed something that is very, very short, very easy, but we have much more complex use cases. Obviously, the stuff that would take months or even years to build, that you can build in a matter of hours at most. We have that guide, co-authored as well by industry leaders from Superbase, Coalesce, Google Cloud. It's all there. You can see as much as you want from it. It's fairly easy to read as well, and it's all available in our website. It's right there. There you go. Thank you for the link. So feel free to also check that out. And without further ado, I am going to go ahead and thank you, Alexi and Ruben, very much for your time. I don't know if there's any questions in the chat. Let me check real quick. All right, I think I'm not seeing any right now. Without further ado, we're going to give maybe a couple minutes more if anyone has any questions. And if not, we are going to thank you for joining us today. And we will be saying goodbye. So let's wait for a bit just in case. I don't know if there's anything in the meantime, Ruben and Alexi, that you want to mention.
Maybe a question that I had this morning when I was doing a demo to a customer was like, what is the difference with Zapier? Because here we just had the time to demo the easiness of the workflow product and how easy for your team to build the business logic that you're waiting for a month. But there's a second part, which is scalability, and which is the main difference with Zapier. Because here we say, oh, okay, 1 week at a time just for the demo. But what if we take back the example of Ruben of like a few minutes ago, where you have like millions of records? Like last week, I was working with a German car company. There are like millions of records to process like this. So you need really strong optimization. So we have a queuing system built in, which makes it super easy for you to manage all this load and to make sure your system scales and still fits your business requirements. For example, you say, I want to minimize the number of requests I do to my systems, but I still need the data to be fresh, like every minute. Like if the record that if I have a new lead, it needs to be in the pipeline at the latest 1 minute after I receive the lead, because you want to send emails, for example, this kind of things. So the scalability part of the workflow, it's a core value. Thank
you very much. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you, Alexis, for mentioning all of this. The webinar is coming to an end, so thanks so much. Have an amazing rest of the day. And feel free to actually book a demo with any of our architects today, because this is really something where you can actually see it in action on your own system. So book a demo now, and see it in action into your own system. Have a good day.
I hope everyone's had a fantastic time. Thank you once again, Ruben, Alexi, and everyone in the audience for being here. I hope you enjoyed this demo. And as Ruben said, feel free to contact us, book some time with an architect, and start trying Stacksync today.
Have an amazing day,
everyone.